I'm Justin Blaney. Thank you so much for being a part of this presentation. I have some handouts that I want to get out to everyone. We're going to get into this a little bit later, so if you can pass these back, please. Looks like I have more than enough. And then at the end of the talk, I have a session evaluation. This is the first time I've given this talk, so I would really covet your feedback. So I have one of these that I might pass around. If you can leave me any notes for improving the talk, that would be really wonderful. So, thank you for that. And then finally, well, we can, welcome. We're just getting started here. If you missed some of the handouts, there's some stuff down here for you to grab. One of each of those. And then I have a book that I want to give away at the end of the course. This is a photography book that I published. It's called Fast Wide Open. And so I just like to thank you guys, give away books. So I have a sign up if you want to. You can just put down your name if you don't want to be on my email list. Or if you put down your email, I'll add you. You can unsubscribe if it isn't a good fit or whatever. But so it's up to you. So I'm going to pass this around, and I'll pick somebody off of that to win the book at the end of the talk. We're going to try to get done early so we can do some Q&A. So one final announcement. Dave printed up copies of all my notes. So if you want these at the end, I'll pass these around as well. And this is kind of detailed. Some of it's probably obscure. But that might be helpful if you decide you want to take a look at that. So we're going to talk about how to find, develop, and share what makes you unique. I believe that uncommon ideas from uncommon people make the world a better place. That's my motivation in life. I want to help people find and develop what makes them unique, and I want to share as many uncommon ideas as I can. I believe in the power of finding and embracing what makes you unique, because in my personal journey, I've spent a lot of my years ashamed of what makes me unique. And it wasn't until recently that I really discovered this. See, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started a dozen companies. And I was always afraid of being like my birth father. I have a great stepfather who's adopted me and married my mom. But my birth father, he was a drug dealer. He was a dreamer. He was always moving from thing to thing. He was a genius, but he never fulfilled his potential because he was always dreaming and never doing. And I was afraid that I was going to be that. And so whenever I jumped to a new thing, because I lost interest, I would try to hide that I had ever done that other thing, and all I am is this new thing now. And one time somebody came to me when I was earlier in my career, and they handed me like 5 or 6 business cards. It was a client of mine that I was selling to. And they said, you might want these back. It was 5 or 6 different companies, and my name was on all of them. In that moment, he was just teasing me, but that stuck with me. And it caused me to be even more ashamed of changing and jumping from thing to thing to thing. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to not be like my father. I was trying to not ever have this situation happen when somebody brings me a stack of business cards. And so I was letting other people dictate who I was. And it took, until recently, it took 15 years, plus or minus, of going through all of these different experiences to really realize that jumping from thing to thing is actually what makes me unique. And it's a valuable asset for me. It may not be for other people, but for me, it was who I am. And what I was trying to do was be somebody else. And I was letting other people way into my life and put shame on me so that I wouldn't be who I was made to be. I call it the you gap. You see, in this world, there is a gap that only you can fill. Do you believe that? There are 7 billion people on this planet, and not one of them can do what you do. Countless billions have come before, and countless billions will come after, but each of you in this room were born for a purpose, a gap that only you can fill. And when you do what I did, was try to be somebody else that I wasn't, try to fill another gap that I wasn't made to fill, the gap I was made for went unfilled. I think a lot of times what we do is we look out and we say, I want to be like that person. I want to be unique like them. I want to have influence like them. And through jealousy and coveting their skills and their gap, we end up doing a really poor job of the thing that we were designed to do. It's not about numbers. It's not about comparing. It's not about how big of a crowd of people that we're influencing. See, because I believe that we can influence one person in an incredible way and be more true to who God made us than if we try to be a fake version of ourselves influencing millions. Because think about this. Now, everybody in this room has made an impact on more than one person, but I'm just going to use an extreme example. Say our gap is to fill and influence and impact just one person. And let's say that we let other people influence us and we try to be somebody we're not. So we become a bad version of somebody else and we leave our gap unfilled. What happens to that one person that we were meant to impact? They suffer because we were not ourselves. And so this is just the philosophy behind this. This is why it's so important to me. I want to talk about the why. That's what we're talking about. Why should we be unique? It's a journey that lasts a lifetime. It's a work in progress. We're also going to talk about some people who are unique, some influential people through history who I think we can curate some ideas from, not copy them, but curate some ideas from to develop what makes us unique. And I want to give you some tools on your journey. Come on in. We're just getting started here. Pick up some of these notes in the front. I want to give you some tools to help work and hone what makes you unique. I think if you talk to me in a year, I'm going to have a slightly different story to tell. And I think that's okay. I think it's a continuous process. And for me personally, I want to peak. You know, if this is the story of my life, I want to peak on the day I die. I want to have continuous improvement and continuous impact growing until the day that I die. And that's the day that I can't do it anymore, so I can't grow anymore. I don't want to peak down here and then have a long, slow decline. So I think it's this journey. I could die today. That could be the period at the end of my sentence. And if I'm doing what I'm called to do, I've done what I can do. And I can have peace with that. I think a lot of the depression that we feel, I know I've been depressed at times, wondering, what is my place in this world? I think a lot of that comes from us trying to be somebody we're not. Through all my entrepreneurialism, I started a development company. And I was fortunate enough, through growth in my company, we were doing millions of dollars a year in sales and grew it to about 35 employees. And I became a millionaire at 25. And then I lost it all at 28. Lost everything. And we moved. I have a wife and 3 daughters. I got married young and had kids young. I had 3 daughters before I was 21. And so we had a fairly mature family, even at 28. And we went from our dream home, which I built with my own hands. I probably should have been working on my business, which is a lesson I learned, right? But I built this house with my own hands. We moved from that into my wife's parents' house, the upstairs room. And they were supportive, but it was an incredibly difficult time. And I tried to start another company, that didn't go. I ended up applying for 2,000 jobs. I lived in Eugene, Oregon at the time. The economy was horrible. And I remember thinking about that song by Michael W. Smith, and when I thought of it, I was like, this is so cheesy, and yet it captured exactly what I felt, which is I'm trying to find my place in this world. Do you guys know that song? Sorry if you're humming it in your head now. I was trying to find, I think this line is wandering through the night to find my place in this world, which makes it even worse. I just like the place in this world part. We're trying to find our place in this world. And I was just crying out. I didn't know where I fit. I had an MBA, I had experienced success, I had a growing family, and I was applying for jobs, pushing carts at grocery stores, and I couldn't get a job even doing that, even for minimum wage. And I said, what is wrong with me? Where is my place in this world? And I think it's times like that that come to all of us, that are important parts of our journey, right? It's not exactly a straight line, of course. Those are the times that are really gifts, because they drive us forward. Now, of course, we can choose to go off the tracks. It's our choice. But if we allow them, they drive us towards our purpose. And since that time, that was 5 years ago, my entire life has changed. I have a whole new network. I moved to Seattle from Eugene. I've learned about networking. I've started a new company that's doing well. We're growing. That's very hard, but we're growing. We're in the battle. I'm working with churches all the time, which I love. Everything I'm doing now is different than before. And I didn't get an answer in those moments. You know, you want to get that answer. You want the answer right now. And sometimes we get a whisper. Patience. Wait. And I think waiting is a gift. And I think that's part of this journey. So you guys are all here because you want to know, you want to develop, you might already have a good idea of what makes you unique. And so I want to talk about one little caveat, and that is that there is a bad form of unique. There is some bad kind of baggage around this topic. If you read any sort of self-help books on this subject, it's almost like repackaged Buddhism or some type of religion. It's about self-love, self-actualization. Do you all know the Maslow's triangle, self-actualization? If you don't, this is something that they're always talking about in psychology and business and economics. And the idea is that, you know, you get your basic needs, your safety and your food and your shelter and your friends, and then you reach this pinnacle of self-actualization. And it's at this point where you can start to really care about others and pour out into others. And people will tell you, but you just need to love yourself more. That's not what I'm talking about. I think we love ourselves plenty. Oftentimes when I'm in my most down moods, I'm almost loving myself too much. I'm so worried about all the bad things that have happened to me. I mean, that's the problem, really. I did a video with a woman in Boston who, it was Thanksgiving time, and the church had some families that needed food. And so she was buying all of this food and giving it to families at Thanksgiving. And you think, boy, she's really at the top, right? No, she was on food stamps. She was somewhere in here. And yet she was outside herself. So I think that this is a false premise, that we have to reach some pinnacle of self-actualization. We've got to get to here before we can get outside of ourselves. Being unique is not about you. Ironically, we're talking about you, right? You. But actually, we're talking about how you can serve the people in your life by being unique. And so that's a very important caveat, because a lot of people say, is this just like some self-love, pseudo-Buddhism theology? No, this is actually about serving others. And it's not as popular. It's not popular to title a book, How to Serve People. You're not going to sell a lot of books. Now, if you title the book, How to Be the Ultimate You, that's going to sell some books, right? And so it's not a popular message, but I think it's an important one. I want to talk about some people that I've studied that are, I think, really unique. And I want to do that, again, not so that we copy them, but so that we can kind of glean some ideas from them. One of the men that I really admire is Walt Disney. And I've read some biographies on him. There's some lessons from his life that I think we can learn as we're exploring what makes us unique. He loved to draw cartoons as a child. He invented his own cartoons. When he was a young man, he was already building his company. And he had his company essentially stolen from him at about 22. A business partner who was trying to do a big deal with basically stole the company from him and all of his employees. And on the train ride home from that, he created Mickey Mouse. So his response to failure was like a lot of great influential people. It was an opportunity for something new. One of the things about him that I thought was unique is he just didn't care about money. There's countless examples in his life where he would sell his possessions to finance something that they were doing in the company. There was one of the first pictures where they synced music with the animation. What was it called? Steamboat Willie. Now, there was a previous cartoon that had synced music with animation. It failed miserably. But Walt wanted to do it. And everybody told him, this is ridiculous. We just saw it happen. It was a failure. The company's going to go under. And he said, no, I want to do it. So they tried. They did their first recording. It was a failure. And they were out of money. And they were under deadline. But he stuck with his vision. He actually sold his car to finance recording it a second time. And that was a huge success. You'll see again when he was building Disneyland, not far from here, he was really frustrated because they could only buy so much land, they could only afford. And this was later in his life, very influential, wealthy man by this time. And they had a gap. They couldn't quite get it done. So he sold his personal house. He had 2 houses, so it wasn't exactly the sacrifice that it would be for me, but still, he was a wealthy man. He was influential, and he just didn't care. He had like a house in Palm Springs or something, sold it to personally finance the construction of Disneyland. I think that's very unique. At each phase of his life, each of these new things he introduced, he was met with resistance on all fronts. His business partners, his family, his friends, his employees, the press. They said Snow White was going to fail. They said Disneyland was going to fail. They said Disney World was going to fail. All of these things that he did, he just had a vision. And for what it often came back to was he wanted to make people happy. He understood his motivation. And I think that that's unique. He just wanted to make people happy. He saw the world. He saw the pain and suffering, and when you walk into Disneyland, you see the placard, and I don't know what it says exactly, but it's like, leave that all behind and enter this world of fantasy. It's an escape. You go to watch Mary Poppins, and for 2 hours you can forget about all that stuff and just enjoy a great story. And so he really understood that motivation, and that drove him to the point where he would sell his personal possessions to finance his dreams. Another person that I'm reading a biography, I wish I would have brought the book, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a slave born in the 1820s or so, and she helped people escape from slavery. She had no advantage in life. Sometimes we look at our life and we say, boy, I wish I could have gone to a better school, been born wealthier. I wish I had more Twitter followers. The things that we We look at and if I could just get to 1,000 followers, then I'd really be on my way to influence. You want to talk about not having advantage? Harriet Tubman was a slave. Do you know the date of your birth? Where you were born? Harriet Tubman didn't. We don't know when she was born. We don't even know the year, because they didn't keep track of slaves' births. She had no money. She was owned. She was physically, horrendously abused. There was one time when she was struck with a lead weight. It created a dent on her head, and for the rest of her life, during a conversation, she would fall asleep at times, only to wake up a few minutes later like she had never stopped talking and just keep going. You don't need to have any advantage in life to be you. It's not about where you were born, how much money you have, how much influence you have. If Harriet Tubman can go from being a slave and having no advantage in life to becoming one of the most influential women in American history, how much can we do with all of the wonderful advantages that we have? I find it incredibly inspiring, and I find it very convicting, because I get frustrated when the microwave takes 30 seconds to make my burrito. Harriet Tubman, she was so unique. She, talking about how our vision of time, she was an entrepreneur. And she actually, as a young woman, went to her master and said, I want to be my own agent. I can make you more money by hiring myself out to all these other people. I'm going to give you a cut, and I'm going to keep a little bit. But you're going to make more money. Can you imagine a slave, a young woman doing that? And it worked. And she wanted to start building some infrastructure in her life. And she needed a cow. It was one of the things that she needed. Now, a cow cost about $40. And she figured she could raise the money at a rate of $10 a year. And she said, well, in 4 years, I'll have my cow. And then I'll be able to move on to the next thing. Now, I want to think about that. Can you imagine the vision to say, I'm going to save $10 a year, and in 4 years, I'm going to have this one cow? Again, we get impatient at stoplights. I get impatient when I'm flying across the country and I'm next to a big guy that I got to share the elbow rest with because I'm on a 5-hour flight. And I lose sight of the fact that I'm in a spaceship, transporting me 2,500 miles in the time that it took, months and months just a few decades ago. And so, I look at that and say, boy, that's unique. She was herself. She broke the mold. So be thinking of in your life, look at people who you see, study people who are unique, and you look at those traits and you say, you don't copy them, you don't Xerox them, you don't plagiarize their life and say, I'm going to take all of that and pretend it's me. No, but you do say, oh, I like that. That one little thing, I'm going to take that and I'm going to help that develop that part of me that resonates with it. I love to do that with some people that are incredibly unique in our life. So we are going to get somewhat interactive. I want to get into the development stage, which we're going to be using the handout in a little bit. But some of the things that I've noticed as I've studied some of these unique people, and I just kind of want to run through them, and just a few observations that might help you on your journey of curating some of these ideas. One of the things I've found is, again, you don't need anything to be yourself. It's like you're a stock car. The factory equipment's all you need. You don't need a fancy chrome rims or spoiler or a muffler or add-ons. Whatever you came with from birth, you've got. And that's all you need to be yourself. We often misunderstand and we think, man, I need more money. I need more influence. I need to have more advantages. I need to have more education. Now, some of those things can help us on our journey, and they're not bad, but we don't need anything other than what's already in us to be who God made us to be. And then we need to take that and develop it. I mean, you can look at these examples. A lot of these people were born with nothing. Walt Disney also was born with nothing. Here's another guy that was incredibly unique, Jesus, right? Born in poverty, born in obscurity, and the greatest example of a man living his unique life that's ever been. Another example, or another common thread, is unique people tend to look at the world and they see something that's wrong, and they set out to fix it. They have a unique lens, and they look at it and they say, that's wrong. I'm going to do something about it. And I sit here and look at it and I say, I don't see it sometimes. I don't get it. That's why they have opposition. You know, Harriet Tubman, her friends and family said, hold on, if you do that, it's just going to come back on us. They're going to become harder on us. People are going to die. You're going to die. And she didn't let that opposition change the fact that she said, I see this thing that needs to be changed, and I'm going to set out to change it. So that's a common thread you see, that there's unique lenses, and many people won't get it. They won't see it because they're not looking through your lenses. They're not looking through the lens that you've been born with and have developed through your life. All of these people were very much on purpose. They were driven by a motivation or a why. They knew why they were living. Sometimes people are born with that. Sometimes you have to develop it through your life. Walt Disney wanted to make people happy. Harriet Tubman wanted to help her friends and family leave this horrendous thing we called slavery. She wanted to save people. Jesus knew his why. He came to fill the ultimate gap. And he did. And so all of these unique people, they live their life according to their motivation. They're always going back to it. It's an important part of uniqueness. They're always focused on serving others, I've noticed. It just tends to be a common trait among people who really understand their uniqueness and really are living in it in a great spot. They're others-centered. It's not about them. They love helping other people. They love being with people. They want to serve other people. They like, and they're okay with bucking the system and going against the opposition. They don't let all that noise get them down. They don't let all the noise veer them off track. And I've just noticed that a lot of uncommon people have these traits. One of the ones that I really love is they're very present in the moment. They're not all frantic about life, like I often am, running 1,000,000 miles an hour, burning the candle at both ends. When they're with you, they're with you. Tammy was talking about that yesterday, and her and I sat down and had a great conversation about it. Just the necessity of being in that moment, being there. One of the stories about Walt Disney was they were building the Autotopia cars, and he signed off on everything at Disneyland. And somebody called him up and said, hey, we've got one of the car prototypes ready. When do you want to schedule a time to come look at it? And he said, no, let's go do it right now. So he grabbed his coat and car, and they drove across LA to look at the car. Now, can you imagine? This is one ride in Disneyland, and this man is very influential, extremely busy. He's running a company with thousands of employees, and he has the presence to be able to just take off and go check out this one little detail. I love that. Jesus was always present. He was with the people he was with. He wasn't worried about all the things that we get caught up in. How am I going to pay my bills next month? No. Who am I with right now? And what can we share together? So I've noticed that about people who are really living in their uniqueness. And the final thing I've noticed is they don't seek to elevate themselves. You don't need to. When you're living the unique life that you're made for, other people will elevate you to the level that you need to be elevated to. Now, sometimes we look and we say, well, I really want to be elevated to this level. And maybe that's not where we're supposed to be. We get in trouble when we start to compare ourselves and we start to say, this is the thing that I want, and so I'm going to go out and get it no matter what. Well, maybe that level of elevation is for somebody else. Maybe our level is here. Are we okay with that? That's a hard question for me to answer, but I want to be. I want to be okay with whatever level, because you, by sheer force of your talent, you can build a life for yourself that maybe has a greater level of elevation. And there's certainly examples of people that have done that, right? Self-promoters, or just people that are all about themselves, and they're extremely talented, and so they're able to get to this really high place. They're not serving others, they're serving themselves. But I think that those people are not filling their gap. Because I think an important part about filling your gap is serving others. It's not about you. And you don't need to elevate yourself. You can let other people do that for you. And you can simply, it comes up all the time, and I'm certainly guilty of it. You look at somebody on a big stage, and maybe you're not driven like I am, but you have something that you look at and say, I really want that thing. And a lot of leaders will say, I want to be a great leader. And what they really want is glory. I've certainly been guilty of that. Because great leaders started by serving the people that were in their life. And then they were elevated according to the need of that position. And so that's just one of the things I've noticed, is people that are really living in their uniqueness are really only concerned with the people in their life at that moment. And then they let all that other stuff kind of take care of itself. So let's break into part 3, which I call developing what makes you unique. And the first thing to point out is there is no recipe, right? This isn't a paint-by-numbers life. We can't go get an instruction manual and just follow step by step. So everything I'm sharing is just my ideas, things that I've noticed. Take them or leave them. It's up to you to curate those ideas and maybe pull 1 or 2 things in, I hope, from this talk that help you on your journey. But there's no recipe. And anybody that tells you there is just trying to sell you a book, And you can't commoditize uniqueness. It's not a commodity. You can't trade it on the stock floor in Chicago because it's unique. Each person is unique. There's a couple of enemies of uniqueness that you got to watch out for. Jealousy, pride, laziness. These are things that are going to inhibit our ability to become the unique self that we were meant to be. Especially jealousy. Because we look at and we see something that we like in somebody else, and it's so easy to veer off course and just say, man, I just really want to be like that. And that person's already taken. They're them. We need to be us. So we need to watch out for that. Bitterness is another thing. We've got to let go of the things the baggage that we're carrying. We can't keep carrying that stuff with us forever. It's time to move on. So those are enemies of uniqueness. One of the things that I've found is that a lot of people discover what makes them unique later in life. Sort of my informal, really unscientific survey. I just ask people. I did this last night with one of the other presenters. And I said, normally I find that people will tell me 45 to 50 is when they discovered their life purpose. And the problem is that we're inundated with these lists of 30 under 30 in Fortune magazine that's like, these 30 people, look at all the great things they're doing, and they're only 28 years old. And so we compare ourselves to them. We say, man, there must be something wrong with me. Look at all the great stuff that guy is doing, that woman is doing, and she's only 25. And here I am, a little older than that, and I'm not as far along as they are. And I think that's a big trap that we fall into. You look at some of the examples, Moses and Abraham, and so many people find out later in life, all of the things they've been doing, all this cross-training and learning all these skills, and then you're ready to do what you were designed to do. Now, I'm not saying that you're waiting until that time. That goes against the point. It's because it's the journey. Because, let's face it, any one of us could die on our drive home today. And so we can't be living for the future, but we also want to be patient and say, it's okay if I don't know everything right now, because I'm trusting that I'm going to learn it as I go. So it takes time, and it can't be for your own glory. I've just noticed that. I think, unfortunately, we look at people and we say, that person is definitely doing it for their own glory, and they're pretty great, and they're pretty unique, so that must mean it's okay. But that's not a rule that I think we can follow. My philosophy is that you can't do it for your own glory. That if you are, you're not going to fill that gap that you were made to fill. Now, you might be more influential, you might be richer, but I think you're going to be missing the calling for your life if you're doing it for your own glory. So, let's get into this interactive workshop. I hope that this is interactive for you guys. So, again, we call this the U gap. Anybody know what this thing is up here? Anybody want to venture a guess? It's a puzzle piece. Everybody says, that doesn't look like a puzzle piece. And the reason why it doesn't is because I was thinking, well, it can't look like a boring old puzzle piece if we're talking about being unique, right? So it's a unique puzzle piece. It's 6-sided. And what I've found, my personal philosophy, is there's 6 components to what makes you unique. And the way I've designed this is like, you have your own why, you have your own where, and we'll talk about each of these things. And that makes up a side. Now, you can have a very similar why to somebody else, but still be completely unique because you've got these other 6 components that make up your uniqueness. So I want to talk through each of these, and then I'm going to give you some tools for developing and working on what makes you unique. And I encourage you, I made the lines light enough that you can write in some answers or some thoughts. And for those of you who are watching online, I'm going to make this available on my website at justinblaney.com/resources. So you can check that out if you're watching online. So please, as you're following along, if you have some thoughts, write it down. So we'll start with why. And each of these corresponds with this picture down here, another illustration. I'm trying to give a couple of different ways to look at this to help. Maybe one of these a light bulb will go off and help you discover something about yourself. This is the very first time flight happened in a heavier than air machine. And I just love this analogy. So each of these components kind of is a different part of this picture, and we'll talk through that. So the why, I like to start with the why. Have you ever, if you've done a lot of networking groups, and the first question you get is, what do you do? Everybody wants to know, what do you do, right? I do it all the time. I ask people that question. Or you sit on an airplane, and if you're next to somebody that wants to talk, they're not reading a book with all the signs that they don't want to talk to you, but they look at you and they say, what do you do? Or they say, where are you going first? Then they ask you, what do you do? So a lot of people ask this question, right? And I like to start with why. I ask people, what's your motivation in life? And I like to tell people when they say, what do you do? I like to tell them what my motivation is. I like to start with why. I found it's a great place to start. So my example, I believe uncommon ideas from uncommon people make the world a better place. It's my motivation in life. And so think about that. What is your why? Anybody want to volunteer a why? Put you on the spot? Be thinking about it. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go. I'm an elementary PE teacher, and I do it because I get to be with students who don't know who God is, and I get to love them and represent Him to them.
Awesome. So your why is getting to influence young men and women in a covert way, because you're a teacher, a public school teacher. Yeah. But you're getting to influence these young people for the gospel. Yeah. That's great. So be thinking about that, and we'll talk about the next component. Where? Where are you going? We look at this flight. I love this. Where are they going? They're going up in the air. But where are you going? So this is like your goal. This is like an envisioned future. My example, I want to help as many people as possible find, develop, and share what makes them unique. A lot of people would put a number to this. You know, you might say, I want to help 1 million people. Or you might say, I want to share the gospel with 5 people this year. You know, you can set different benchmarks on your journey. It's not just the envisioned future, but maybe the shorter term. Anybody want to volunteer a where? Where are you going? Anybody? What's a goal? What's your envisioned future?
Beyond global domination.
Beyond global domination? Explain that.
I'm sorry, I'm being silly. So I guess a goal would be to educate lots of people.
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on it for me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, how am I going to put a number on it? But a lot of people would suggest that you do. I don't. But so you want to educate lots of people.
And be educated.
Cool. That's great. So that's another piece of another side of your puzzle. The next part, how will you get there? How are they going to get there? They built a plane. That's the how they're going to get where they're going. Now, my example, helping people develop and share what makes them unique, my example, I do that through speaking, writing, and coaching. But there's other hows to do that. I could be a carpet layer, and I could lay this carpet, and as I'm working with my employees and my contractors and suppliers, I can be talking to them about what makes them unique and sharing my philosophy. There's lots of hows to get something done. If you want to educate people, you could do that through blogging. You could do that through being a teacher. You could do that through mentoring. So each person has a unique how for how they're going to get there. The next one, what will you do? My example, I speak, write, and coach. There's a small nuance and difference between what and how. In my example down here, the what is tied to the rudder. So they're flying over here in the plane, but the person on the controls has to decide which way to turn the rudder, and they have to decide how much to rev up the engine. And so there's different ways to use the how to get where you're going. And that's the what. How about the who? The fifth piece of this puzzle, the fifth side of the puzzle, who are you taking with you? Who are you serving? Who are you helping on their own journey? I love this. These guys right here, they're not on the plane, but they got to go on the journey. Right? Look how excited they are. And it's an important part of our uniqueness. Anybody want to volunteer a who? Who do you feel called? This is the demographics. You know, it's the people around you, or maybe you're called to go to another country to do something, or maybe you want to have a large number of people that you help in a little way, or maybe a small number of people that you help in a big way. Anybody have a who that they want to volunteer?
Leaders, thinkers, missionaries, and entrepreneurs and theologians.
Okay, good. Yeah, so you've got some specific kind of categories that you feel called to serve. For me, I want to serve people who are really driven. I don't want to work with somebody that's just going to be in one ear, out the other, never take any action on it. Now, again, there's no right or wrong answers. Some people are going to be called to work with those people because they might need to be developed along and gotten to the point where they're ready to take action. But I'm not, like to me, that's not my thing. And so the who is going to be different for each person. And you can really narrow that in. And one of the secrets is really who is around you right now. And who, because oftentimes we say, boy, I really want to serve that group over there, ignoring the people that are in our life. And so I think that that's one of the pitfalls we can run into. And then one of the most important parts, when. When will you start? When will you get there? And what are some benchmarks along the way? So it's just measuring the when. Now you might say, the answer to when will you start is pretty self-explanatory right now. But not necessarily, because sometimes there's things that you need to wait for in life. Maybe part of your uniqueness is getting married, and you're not at the point where you're getting married today, right? That might be in your future. Or maybe you need to get a degree. Or maybe you need to switch your job, but you're not quite ready to switch your job because you have some responsibilities to take care of. So it's not always now. Sometimes it's later that we're going to initiate this path that's going to take us to our uniqueness. And that's okay. But kind of knowing and thinking about when those things are going to take place. Now you can, I think you should, start now in the sense that it's never too late, and you've always got a great opportunity today to be building and developing and honing what makes you unique. Again, if you ask me in a year, I would probably give you different answers to some of these questions, if not all of them. That's okay, because it's an iterative process. They might be the same. I would love for them to be the same, but I can't guarantee that, because things are going to happen in my life that are going to cause me to change direction a little bit. We think that we've got a destination, and here we are, and we just get there. But that's not how life works. We start off going here, and then here, and it's this thing, and you might eventually get there, but it's not a straight journey. So we go down here and we realize, oh, that's not quite right, and we change, and this is, I've seen again and again how life works. And again, it's about the journey. So one of the important parts of this is you're writing these things and considering them, is start trying them out on people. Next time somebody asks you what you do, try to remember what some of the thoughts were. It's really hard, or you might say something different every time, and that's okay. And then see how they respond. And then you can start to hone it. And I put mine on my website, right on the front of the website. I put it on my business card. And if it's like, oh, that's not quite right, I'll change it. But you start to get some feedback from people, and it starts to help you really understand who you are. I want to give you some tools for honing in these things, because these are fairly abstract ideas. And you might be thinking, well, that's very open-ended. I'd like some steps I can take. I've written down quite a few questions on the back of this that you can answer for yourself. You might have some of these down pat, and others you don't know. You don't have a clue. I'm that way. Some of them I don't have a clue on. Some of them I have a good answer for. Some of them don't apply to me. You might be like, that just doesn't do anything for me. That's okay. These are just ideas, tools. Just because you have a toolbox full of 50 tools doesn't mean you need to use them all. As long as you have one that gets the job done. So we're going to talk through some of these now. And what time are we at? We got plenty of time. Good. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me anytime. We will have Q&A at the end. So here's some tools for what makes you unique. One of the things I've discovered is you've heard the analogy of the people who were describing an elephant, right? And they put their hand up, but they're blind. So they feel one thing and they say, boy, this thing is large and kind of scaly or soft. And then another person's holding the legs. They're like, it's kind of cylindrical and a tube. Another person feels the trunk. This thing curves up like this and it's flexible. That's what our uniqueness is like. People will talk to you and they'll say, you know what you are? You're this. And then somebody else will say something completely different. And they'll say, boy, you're really good at this. This is what you should be doing. And it's like two different things. I remember being really frustrated in school. My science teacher would say, Justin, man, you're very engaged in class, you get good grades, you should be in science. You should be a scientist. And then my math teacher would say the same thing. And my English teacher would say the same thing. And I was very frustrated by it, because it's like, well, I can't do all of these things. And actually, if I had done any of them, I would have been miserable. Because to be a scientist, you have to do repetitive tests over and over. And I would get bored after like the third one, and I would quit and go do something else. And so I would be a bad scientist. And what they were actually saying is that I love ideas. I was interested by all these different things. And so the common thread was the uncommon idea, which is how I've come to my why. You might find that that's the case with you, where people are pointing out these different things, or you've got these sort of all these things and they don't seem connected. And it takes some effort to find the common thread through them. And it's important to listen, but not put too much weight on any one thing, because any one thing is just like the blind person feeling the elephant. But once you put them all together, you say, boy, it's an elephant. And that's what it's like when you can find your uniqueness. So again, listen to people, invite them in, and we're going to talk about that. What do people say about you? One of my favorite sayings is, take the advice that you agree with and the advice you hear again and again. So if you keep hearing the same advice, maybe you should listen to it. Or if you hear something, you're like, boy, that's great advice. But if you hear one person say, you know what, this is what you need to do, and it's kind of out there, well, weigh that, with a grain of salt. One of the tools for developing what makes you unique is to ask people, what do you think makes me unique? Ask them. Send out an email to some of the people that know you best. Ask your spouse, ask your friends, your clients, your coworkers. You're going to get different answers, or you might get, people will say, I don't know. They might not have an answer for you. So one of the problems we have is that society has dictated that certain things are more valuable than other things. And so if you're good in school, like I was, that's pretty, they say, oh, well, that must mean that you're good at something. But there's other things that's harder to value. There's a book out right now called The Power of Quiet, or it's basically about introverts, yeah. And so the book is all about debunking the theory that you have to be this magnanimous, extroverted person to have value, that actually introverts can be valuable too. And as a society, we do that with lots of things. And so you might be frustrated. I have people in my life who are very frustrated by this, because they're like, nobody comes up to me and says, oh, you're really good at this thing. And if that's you, it certainly doesn't mean that you don't have gifts. Certainly doesn't mean that. But what it probably means is that the gifts you have are the ones that society hasn't deemed to be incredibly valuable, that we talk about all the time. Because society, whoever said they were a good judge of anything, they think it's great to be in front of millions of people, and that's obviously better than serving one person. But is it? Of course not. If you're called to be the person that fills the gap for just one person, think about Harriet Tubman. She helped deliver 70 people from slavery. Now, who is more important in history? Harriet Tubman, who basically served 70 people, or somebody that has an audience, a Twitter following of 10,000? Well, Harriet Tubman changed the lives of 70 people in the deepest sense. And it's partly because of that, and also because of her actions, leading to millions of more people eventually being freed from slavery, that made her such a great, influential, wonderful person. So it's not so much about the numbers. That's why we can't just say, well, these skills are more valuable than these skills, because that's what the marketing companies say. That's what advertising says. We really need to look at, well, what are the skills that I have, regardless of what people say is valuable or not, and how can I develop that? So if you're in that spot where people aren't offering those things up, you might just need to dig a little bit more. You just have to be willing to dig a little deeper and keep pursuing it a little bit more to find those things when you start to ask people. So ask people. One of the things I've found is that a tool for finding what makes you unique is sometimes the things that made you odd as a child are the things that make you unique as an adult. So what was odd about you? You know, what all the other kids were playing on the playground, but you were what? You know, you look at a lot of people, Tiger Woods, golfing at 3, right? Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were hacking computers when all the other kids were going to the prom, right? And so there's these things that you look at and you say, boy, that's kind of weird, you know, when you're a kid, or it's just different. You know, you talk about a lot of great performers. I don't know if Jennifer Lawrence is this. I think I read about her that she was doing a lot of theatrics with her friends in the backyard as a child. And now she has an Academy Award, and she's like in her 20s, right? And so sometimes you can look at your life and you can say, what were the things that were different about me as a child? And it's like breadcrumbs on the trail, the path to finding what makes you unique over here. We talked about Harriet Tubman. As a young person, she was an entrepreneur, and she was bucking the system by negotiating to become her own agent as a slave. You know, you don't do that. But that was an example of her saying, hey, I don't think I have to play by the rules. I can kind of make my own rules up. Walt Disney was drawing cartoons and making his own, you know, animated comics as a child. Jesus, what did he do? And he was 12 years old. He was debating the scriptures with the religious leaders to the point where his family left him and was worried sick about him. You know, but he was a 12-year-old boy. And so you see sometimes that the things that make us odd or different as a child are the things that make us unique. Now you might look at that and say, that does nothing for me. I don't, you know, and that's okay, because it's just one tool. So here's another tool. How do you want to be remembered when you're dead? Have you heard of life planning? It's a big thing right now. A lot of people are talking about life planning. It's like a business plan, but for your life. And people, what you do is you start with the end. What do you want to be at the end? And here you are today. And so, you know, take some time to think about this. Write this down. How do you want to be remembered? What is going to be your legacy? What do you want your legacy to be? And whatever that is, if you're here, well, now it becomes a lot easier to decide how to get there, because all you got to do is connect the dots along the way, on the path. Now, if you're over here and you want to get here, well, then you connect the dots this way. So, for example, if you want to be remembered as a great father, mother, well, the dots are spending time with your kids, developing your children, loving them, caring about them more than yourself, helping them achieve their life goals, right? You can't get to the end and have your kids love you and remember you as a great mother or father and go over here and never be around. And see what I mean? So if whatever you want to be at the end, you think about, it becomes easier to connect the dots to get there. It's an incredibly powerful concept, and I would encourage you to spend some time doing life planning and thinking about what do you want to be at the end of your life? How do you want to be remembered by your spouse? How do you want to be remembered by your friends? You know, a lot of people, especially men, don't have friends. Do you want to have some friends remember you? Well, you gotta spend time making friends. And so that's all part of the life plan, but it also helps us figure out what makes us unique. Because each of us are going to have a slightly different thing, something different that we want at the end of our life. And so that can weigh into what makes us unique. I put on here, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? We always ask that to kids, but a lot of us are still figuring that out. And that's okay. So if you write a list of the things that you want to be, maybe at the end of your life or somewhere along this path, the things that you want can help you figure out what makes you unique. You have to be a little careful, because sometimes we want something like influence way up here for a reason that may not be healthy, right? We want something because maybe we want to be wealthy because that is comfortable. We don't have to want to worry about paying our bills all the time. I would like that. But some things we want and we're not going to get. Some things we want and that's an indication of the gifts and abilities that are in our life. So we just have to be careful about that distinction. An important tool, it's kind of a tool, is don't compare yourself to others. We have to get rid of all of the baggage that we carry around. I look at other people and I'm jealous of them. I'm jealous of, different things. We sort of create like this superhuman. We want to be attractive like that person, and rich like that person, and funny like that person, and a good speaker like that person. And it's like, we want all of those things. That person is like, that's like a Barbie doll version of reality. It's not real, and it's not fair to us, because it's not us. So we definitely have baggage in our culture. We watch Hollywood and we watch advertising, which teach us through repetition the important things in life. And that creates a lot of baggage. We have to be willing to let that go if we're going to really discover what makes us unique. So it's kind of a tool. Again, we talked about asking people, seeking advice on what makes you unique, or what are your talents, or what are your gifts. Write all those things down. You're going to get some random stuff and some noise, like we talked about, because people are seeing different parts of you. But over time, you're going to start to see some threads. Something keeps coming up. You're a great listener. That's something that the society doesn't really value, being a great listener. And so if your talent, if your gift, your unique place is just really being present with somebody on a one-on-one basis and really listening to them and giving them this outlet, that's not something that is going to, people aren't going to point that out from a mile off and say, whoa, you're really great at that. Because it's just, society doesn't care about listeners. They value talkers, shouters, people with a bullhorn. So it's an example that you've got to kind of sift through. But you'll have some people that are close to you that be like, boy, I love being with you because I always feel like you're listening to me. And maybe that means that that you're a coach. There's a lot of things that could mean. One of the things that we need to do is question our choices. Sometimes we get started down a path and we're doing something, and we need to take a step back and ask why. Oftentimes we're doing it because it worked for somebody else. And so we extrapolate and we say, well, it worked for them, it must work for me. It's not always the case. Can you imagine if a doctor did it that way? If you come in and they say, well, we recommend colonoscopy. And you say, well, what's that based on? And they say, well, the last guy that came in, he got one and it worked for him. And you say, well, I'm going to go get another doctor. But yeah, we do that in our life. We say, that person went to business school and they're successful. I must need to go to business school. And we need to step back and say, well, why? I think that's an important step that we don't take. One of the things we need to do is avoid labels. I do this all the time. I fail at something, anything, and sometimes my inclination is to label myself as a failure. Oh, he's a failure. You know? Done deal. He's going to fail at everything. Failure, failure, failure. Right? And so we label ourselves with any type of negative thing, and we really have to fight that urge. It's a human tendency, and a lot of us suffer from it at times. But when you look at what certain personalities that are really successful in life, they have a tendency to avoid this practice. So when something negative happens to them, they say, oh, well, I won't do that next time, or I'll do it different. One example is like, what's that?
The term is they externalize it. Instead of internalizing it, personalizing it, I am a failure, they just say, that was a bad experience.
Exactly.
So they take it outside themselves, they look at it objectively and say, oh, that was a bad experience, I'll learn from it. And they don't take it in as an aspect of their character. They don't personalize it.
Well put. And I do both. Sometimes I internalize it, sometimes I learn from it, and I'm trying to tip the scale to the positive side of that more often. And I think we're all on that somewhere, on that pendulum. Are we internalizing it more, externalizing it more? And so that's just something I'm challenging myself with. So when something negative happens, I don't immediately start beating myself up and saying, oh, well, he's a failure. There you are, Justin, failure. And so if we're going to be our unique self, we've got to get over that, because that's going to be a real inhibitor. One of the last things is we have to start by doing. Too many times in life we're paralyzed by waiting for something to happen in our life. And so we just sit and we wait, and we wait, and we're frustrated, and we wait some more. But we've got to start by doing. We can start today, and the process of getting there, in the waiting, I think, is a great gift. In the waiting is life. Right? Imagine the child that's tired of school. I can't wait to be done with school. And then I can't wait to be done with college. I can't wait to get married. I can't wait till the kids are grown up. I can't wait till I'm retired. Then he's dead. And he spent his whole life not living. So we've got to start by doing. And that is the most important thing of finding and developing what makes us unique, is we've got to start today. We've got to enjoy the process. There's nothing else that you need to learn to start developing what makes you unique. I know you're in this conference. You're all here hoping to come to this conference and learn something that you can take with you, and you have. We're at the end of this conference, and I hope it's been really awesome for you. But there's nothing else that you need to learn. Not that you learned everything in the world today at this conference, but you have everything you need to start right now. And I want to encourage you to start. A lot of people say, sometimes we start something halfway, it's a little hard, we can't quite figure it out, so we say, oh, well, I need to get a book. So we read the book. And we say, well, I'm going to go to a conference and learn some more. We get addicted to the learning because the learning is easier than the doing. And in our minds already is so much knowledge that's unapplied. I can't tell you how much stuff I know that I don't do. I know the right choice and I don't do it. And so more and more I'm trying to challenge myself. Now learning is very important, but there's a time for learning, there's a time for doing. We need to have those in the proper balance. It's like the golfer who's always trying to improve his swing by getting new golf clubs. We say, boy, my swing is not improving. I'm going to get another putter, or I'm doing a driver, right? We're all guilty of that at times. So we've got to catch ourselves in that and say, no, I'm going to practice my swing some more before I get another club. The same thing that we do with books, with learning. So there's a gap between what we know and what we apply. We can actually get a lot done by just closing that gap a little bit. So we've got, I want to get to part 4, which is sharing. I think it's an important part of developing what makes you unique. And then again, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Any quick questions before we move on? So be thinking about stuff. If you write one down, we'll get to it at the end. So we're going to talk about sharing. If you are the most unique person in the world, you're exactly who you were made to be, and you don't share it, what's the point? See, the final link, closing the loop, is in the sharing. And there's different parts of sharing. There's sharing yourself, there's serving others, and there's helping other people along the path that you've come. There's 2 different ways to share, and a lot of us get caught up in the second one. Now there's sharing and there's shouting. So a lot of us think we get a big bullhorn and we're just going to shout out all the wonderful things about us and how we can help everybody, or we can share with an open hand and we can serve, which is more effective. The sharing, I believe. The shouting gets much more attention. It's way cooler. It's easier. But I just don't think it's the way to go. I think that if we just share ourselves to the people around us, the people that we've been given, the people that we're with today, the people that we have on our calendar for coffee and lunch, and our employees or our coworkers, if we would just share with them, the people that follow us on our blogs or the people on our social media, it doesn't matter how many there are. We just start by sharing with them and let everything else take care of itself. I think, man, I wish I could do that more often, because I get so sidetracked with wanting more people, or more of whatever, and I wish I would just calm down, just relax sometimes, and just be like, you know what, there's one person that I'm having coffee with today. How can I share with them? How can I serve them? One of the ways to develop, they say one of the best ways to learn is to teach. And the same principle applies here. As you help other people along, not only in sharing what makes you unique, but in helping them develop their uniqueness, you're going to benefit from that process. And so the same principle applies. I highly recommend mentoring. Everybody in here, and me included, we need to be finding people that we can pour into. And when people ask, we need to say yes. I had somebody ask the other day, I can't remember, I think I have an email. Somebody asked for advice on something. My initial reaction is, I don't have time. And I stopped and I said, of course I'll help. Let's set up a phone call. And this also happened a couple of months ago, and I came to the phone call, and I was kind of dreading it because I had a ton of stuff to do, and I got on the phone call, and I was so blessed by spending an hour with this young man who was early in his career, wanted to get into entrepreneurship, and it was so freeing to not get anything, not have any agenda. I was just there to help him. It was just incredibly freeing, because I knew that it's not like he's going to be able to get me some big contract for my business, or there's nothing that I can get from him except the intrinsic value in helping him, which is more valuable than all the other stuff that I would have tried to get from him if I had an agenda going into the call. So, we need to have people that we're bringing along with us, as well as seeking people to follow. A side note: a lot of people ask about mentoring. How do you do mentoring? I've talked to a lot of really influential people that have gone really far in their careers, and almost all of them approach mentoring the same way. And that is that they have a lot of different people that they can reach out to for whatever they need. A lot of us think we need to have one mentor that we're going to walk through life with, like a sage, and they're just going to take us through everything. And maybe that's great, and it works for some people. But what I've noticed is a lot of people, they're good at some things. They might be a great investor and a horrible spouse. Does that mean that they don't have any information for you about investing? I would never ask them about marriage. But they can help me invest better, and maybe I can help them with their marriage. So, we can pick and choose, as a side note, some people that we're trying to draw from to improve ourselves, and then also looking behind us and saying, who can we help? Because there's always somebody that we can bring along with us. So again, sharing, a very, very important part, and just start. It's just as simple as that. I'm trying to think of one last thing to leave you with. Some people will tell you, and the Bible says this, do good with a little and you'll be given more. But the principle doesn't always work the same for everybody. We might want to have more wealth, but we're not intended to have more wealth. We might be intended to be poor. So it's tempting for me to write a talk title like this to say, develop your uniqueness and grow your income, because that's what people want. But what if their uniqueness leads them to have less income? Again, it's not a popular talk title. I'm going to teach you how to have less income. I would be alone in this room if I'd said that. And so we have to be careful that this isn't about, growing to some preconceived notion. It's really stripping all that away and just saying, who am I supposed to be? And that might mean that we have less of some of the things that we think we want. But I think that we'll have more fulfillment, more joy, more pleasure from life, more impact than we could have ever had if we tried to choose and chase after all those things that we thought we wanted. So I'll leave you with that. And if you have any questions, I'd love to take those now. We've got 10 minutes.
Do you find it's hard for people to focus on some of these questions?
Which questions?
Where are you going? How will you get there?
Yeah, it's hard for me to focus on them. I think that that's a good question. I think that that's part of the journey. It's part of this process. So this isn't a very focused path. But for some people, that's the path. Now, for some people, it's more like this, And those people, sometimes I'm jealous of them, and sometimes I wonder how they can stand their lives, because I'm so addicted to change. But they're very steady. They pretty much have known what they want, and it's pretty much heading there. The part of my problem was I was trying to be focused, and I wasn't meant to be focused. Now I'm becoming more with life, so things change over time. What was okay in my 20s is not necessarily okay in my 30s. And jumping around has more ramifications now. One of the things I've learned is to develop a process behind me so that I can capture some of my energy on that thing and not just let it go to dust, right? So there's lessons I've learned, and I'm becoming much more focused, much more patient as I get older. So I think it's a huge depends to answer your question. Depends on that person's path. Yeah.
One of the hardest things, I think, is as a young man, when everyone around you thinks they know exactly what you should do, because they've known you a long time, they know some of your skills,
Yeah.
and when they feel so convinced, and when you yourself know you have no interest in it, I think that's the hardest thing to struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
As even in positions of leadership anywhere where people think they know you more than you know yourself. And sometimes it's hard to balance what they're advising you to do and what you feel about yourself, what you know about yourself, and trying to balance those two. How, especially when someone you respect, how would you?
Like a family member?
Yeah, not just a family member, maybe someone that has been with you for a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like my dad wanted me to be a plumber. He was a plumber. And that's what he said, Justin, get a job. No, I'm talking about my stepdad. He was a good father to me, but he didn't understand me at all. I could never do a trade my whole life. That's not to say it's a fantastic job. And in some ways I wish I could, because it's just I'd love to just know that my bills were paid all the time and I could make a budget. But so you're going to deal with that definitely when you're young. But I think your whole life, you're always going to have other people that are giving you advice, and it's only you that can decide what your path is in the end. Now, it's wise to take counsel, very wise, and it's very foolish to ignore counsel, but you need to weigh the counsel against your own knowledge, against what other people say, against what you hear here, and with other books you've read. So you put all of that into the pot, and you mix it up, and then you look in there, and it's your job to figure out what that means. Now, anybody that loves you is going to want you to make the right decision for you. And so if you come to them with respect, especially as a younger man, and you say, boy, I really respect your opinion, and I'm going to weigh that really, really heavily. Thank you for giving that. And then if you decide that that's not the right path, you can say, I really weighed that, I really thought about it hard, and I just feel like I'm led, in a different direction. And maybe I'm wrong, but, I'm going to go the path that's true to my heart. Yeah. Any other thoughts? You guys filling out my feedback form for me so I can improve my talk?
I just wanted to share with you that I went ahead and I sent an email during some of when you were sharing about the UGAP to about 60 people.
Oh,
I had
cool.
3 people replied. It's very, very encouraging, and it's so neat that you gave me a reason to do it, because I think that maybe I would have started interviewing people, but I don't know if I would have felt comfortable just sending an email without saying.
Workshop.
I'm in a
Yeah.
session. I'm in a session right now.
You can say this crazy guy said it,
And
and
he encouraged me to do this, and anyway, so it's.
Oh, that's
this is
wonderful.
Coming back to see what people are saying. Also, this is an area that I really am passionate about and love, and there's resources from Lori Beth Jones, The Path, that really helped me to write my own mission statement. There's a workbook called Life Keys that's phenomenal as well. And then there's an excellent book written by Gordon T. Smith called Courage and Calling that have really been helpful to me
cool.
In the process, so I thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Where are the book sign-up forms so we can do that giveaway? Anybody have those? Did it get passed around to everybody? It got lost somewhere. There's a sign-up sheet with the emails and all that. Oh, you got that? Can you guys pass that down here and we'll do that giveaway? I'll stick around as long as you guys want to talk. I'll be here until you all are gone. I also have, these are my business card, but it's also a gift card. And if you want a free coaching session, I'd be glad to give you a coaching session. So I'll leave these up here. Feel free to take one before you go. And we'll keep taking questions. Do you want these notes too? Copious notes? These are my private notes, so don't think badly of me. Of course, I didn't even use them. You're probably going to see a completely different talk on there than I gave. What other questions can we answer in the last few minutes here?
So I kind of find it difficult in some of these areas.
I wish we had more time because I would want to go through like each of these with you, and because it's so hard to apply.
No, absolutely. Just looking at this, like, well, they're just like my life in general. It's hard to answer these questions until I focus on certain ideas or visions that I have for things, and that makes it a little bit easier. But like in general, it's really difficult.
Because you feel like you have so many options?
Right, or so many different ideas that might be taking different paths.
Can I ask how old you are?
21.
So, are you in school here at Biola?
Yeah.
So that's a very common position to be in when you're 21.
Okay.
And that's cool.
Okay.
And it's exciting, but it's also very common for people at that age to be like, man, there's like a million things I could do, and a bunch of them sound good. So what my advice is to try different things, and one of the keys is try it for long enough to know whether it's really for you or not, but not so long that you've spent years and years of your life going down the wrong path for you.
They're all like, they all umbrella under business ideas, which is what my interest is.
Sounds like you.
Different business ideas.
So you're heading off towards business ideas, kind of in a general direction, and you might start a business and it might fail.
Right.
Then you try another one.
Gotcha.
And so it's a beautiful process. It's just we want to have all the answers right now, and it's frustrating when we don't. And I would be surprised if you didn't feel that way. So, but the thing is, you just pick one of them and just do it.
Okay.
And if it fails, or if you don't like it after 6 months, be like, okay, do something else. And so I call it cross-training. It would be extremely rare for you to do something and discover that that's your thing at your age. Mm-hmm. So you give yourself permission to basically fail for the next 15 years or 50 years, however long it takes, until you find your thing. So, but you give yourself permission. Don't expect so much of yourself, like I did. Yeah, I got this jump start in life because I was gonna like figure it all out when I was 18.
I feel that, like, going into, like, obviously you got married, and then you're like, man, I want to start all these businesses, and like risking that, and like, a lot of entrepreneurs like to be single because they're not risking someone else's.
I got married because me and my girlfriend got pregnant when I was a teenager. And we love each other. We're still married for 15 years, and I've got the most wonderful family in the world. So I experienced what most people would look at and say, this horrible event has happened. Your whole life has been derailed. You could have done all these great things with your life, and now you're going to have to be a father and work at a mill, and in reality, that negative thing for me was turned into the greatest blessing of my life. And so you'll find that, especially when you're following God. And so every life can break the rules. And so if you want to start a family and be an entrepreneur, you can do that. It's now for me, it was a very hard path. There was a lot of hard things I experienced. But if I hadn't experienced them, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'd probably be a druggie or, in jail if some of those bad things hadn't happened to me.
Do you feel like there was more pressure when you were taking some risks in that?
I was too young to know about the pressure, so I took them without knowing what I was getting into.
Like I imagine
I'm more cautious now because I've failed in such big ways. But it's kind of a blessing to not
your
know.
wife is okay with that.
She's had to get okay with it because
Yeah.
she's a wonderful, gracious woman, but she wasn't born that way. I think she'd rather if I was like a firefighter or something. Just came home, and
Walt Disney, was he married?
yeah, he got married pretty young,
Okay.
in his early 20s.
I was just like considering some of those things, like how does that affect his family? Like,
Yeah, there's no preset rules.
I'm sure they like support him in that, but like I wonder if he feels that extra pressure. Me selling this car, me selling this house, is affecting not just me, but other people around.
Yeah, you have to do it because it's you. And if you're doing it because it's you, then you have no other choice. So people want to be an entrepreneur or they want to be something, and they say, people ask me, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I would say either you are or you aren't. If you're trying to be something, so for me, I can't avoid it. I try to get a job and I'm a horrible employee. I'm unemployable. Almost in a sinful sense, like I just can't do it. I will abuse the situation because my mind just doesn't work that way. It's very hard for me. So I have no choice but to be an entrepreneur. And I've had a lot of people try to hire me, and it's tempting because it's like, that would be really nice. But I have to tell them, you will hate me in a year. We will not end friends.
I think
So-
that's really critical what you said, is that you have no other choice than being an entrepreneur.
Same thing, people say that for being a pastor.
Yep.
Don't be a pastor unless it's like, this is all I can do.
It's true.
Yeah.
Don't be a missionary, because you will fail, and you will experience so many trials. And if you can be something else, then you will end up quitting and doing something else.
How do you advise people who have a total passion to do X? So I have a lot of students who say, well, I like your job, but the cards get dealt in such a way that it doesn't work out. If they have the capacity, they have the ability, they'd be great at it.
How old are your students? Are they adults?
Yeah, they get to be in their 30s.
Okay, so you're not talking high school or it's
No, it's not going to happen. You can be the best trumpet player in the United States, and most of the great trumpet players in the United States are unemployed.
Well, sure, it depends. Like if you want to be an artist, I hope you like being poor, because it's very hard to make money being an artist. So there's certain occupations that are like that.
So what would you advise someone
Well-
who doesn't want to be poor but simultaneously is probably great at being an artist and not so great at much of anything else?
You have to give up one or the other. Now, you can be a rich artist.
Right.
It's just rare. And if you do it for the money, I was a songwriter for a while. And so during my time of transition, I thought, I'm going to be a songwriter now. And I actually went to Nashville, and that was going to be my career. And it was so stupid because it's incredibly hard to get into. And even really successful songwriters don't make that much money. But I was blind to all of that. I just thought I'm going to do it because I want it. And it was just foolishness on my part. I'm still thankful for the experience because it was fun, and I learned a lot. But you have to, especially with art, and I think with a lot of occupations, you don't do it. The money the money should never be the reason to do anything, I think. But especially certain things like art. A lot of entrepreneurs are not successful. It's a painful life in a lot of ways. So I would say do what you love, and don't do it for the money. And oftentimes you will find that you can make money, if you do what you love. Some occupations lend themselves to that more than others. But going back to the uniqueness, do what you were uniquely made to do without regard for anything else. If you were uniquely made to be a teacher, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how much success you have or any of that. If you were made to be a missionary, do that. Don't look at anything else. And it's hard because it's hard to determine if that's really you. I think that's the hard part. But that's the goal, is to figure that out.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.